Yo, what it do, brothers? You're not tuning in all that rah-rah with your Hebrew brother, Milo Judah. What's going on, brothers? So, brothers, growing up, we've all had a friend or a cousin or a sibling or a parent or a grandparent who was overweight or heavyset, right? And a lot of times, especially back then, because nowadays, I mean, you still have that phenomenon going on, but nowadays with the advent of social media, I mean, it's pretty easy to see if someone is overindulging in something. But, in the 90s and the early 2000s, a lot of times people didn't take accountability for being overweight. A lot of times they would blame it on whatever circumstance that they had going on in life rather than just admitting, I'm going through something traumatic and the way that I'm coping with it is to overindulge in food. Right? A lot of times people never, especially back then, they never wanted to admit it. So with that being said, man, today you still have the same thing going on, but we know that there are a ton of overweight so-called black women. Now the thing is, like, you scroll down social media, you start to see where brothers, they start to, make comments about the so-called black woman. And the so-called black woman and the so-called black man is getting fed up, saying things like, why don't you say things about the so-called white man or the so-called white woman? And, it's almost like sending your child to school and your child comes home with a horrible report card. And you're starting to get on your child and your child says some shit like, but little Timmy had an F2. I don't care about little Timmy. That's not my child. You are my child. I care about what you have going on. Same thing when brothers say things about the so-called black woman and, they start to try to redirect and say, well, why don't you say things about the so-called black man, the so-called white man or the so-called white woman? Don't nobody give a fuck about the so-called white man or the so-called white woman. I think that's hard for liberals of our people to grasp because a lot of times they want to fit in with the so-called white man and the so-called white woman, and the way that they do that is trying to compare themselves to them. But when you have brothers like myself who could care less about what the so-called white man and the so-called white woman have going on, and we tend to correct our people, starting with ourselves first and our family first, but correcting our people, you start to get our people feeling away because the truth hurts, right? So when it comes to the situation with obesity, you'll start to see a ton of so-called black women overweight. You see a ton of so-called black women not working out, not exercising, getting BBLs, trying to move the fat from one spot to another. And it's like, we have every excuse under the sun for why we can't get ourselves correct. But really what it falls back to is accountability, discipline, and effort. And a lot of times with the so-called black woman, they fail in those three areas in life, and it tends to spill over into other areas in their life, whether it be relationships, finances, their personal health when it comes to, weight. It's a lot of things that the so-called black woman has, she sees as a form of oppression. And with a lot of these so-called black single mothers out here raising a lot of these so-called black boys, they see order as oppression as well. And therefore you start to see a lot of disorder amongst our people. But with that being said, brothers, I know I started to ramble. I haven't been on here in a while, so I got some shit to say. And it might not all come out in one video, I got to start dropping these videos, man, because it's been a lot going on in my life. But, all praise to the Most High, I'm still here. That's all that I can ask for as a man. I'm able to raise my son. I'm able to raise my daughter. That's all that I can ask for. But with that being said, brothers, we are going to get into the element of the overweight epidemic that is going on amongst the so-called black woman in the so-called black community. And don't get it twisted. It's some fat, sloppy ass brothers out here too.
When people talk about black women being obese, I hate it.
I bet you do.
Because it becomes a way to blame us for a set of conditions that we didn't create.
No, ma'am. You look to be at least in your mid-40s. So with that being said, you've had an ample amount of time to lose weight. You've had an ample amount of time to give effort to lose some weight. You've had an ample amount of time to form a consistent routine to lose weight. Now, the grace I will give is if she would have said something like, from my childhood, my parents fed me things that weren't beneficial to me, and I was fat as a child and fat as a teenager, and it's been difficult to lose weight. And like I said, I would give grace to that. But even still, with this lady looking to be in her mid-40s, I'll be generous and say 40. I'm not going no younger than that. I'll be generous and say 40. So you've had at least 20 years to get yourself together. So no, ma'am.
We are living in the Trump era. And look, those policies kill our people. And what public health practitioners think is that our stress responses in the body change our metabolism. It's literally that the racism that you're experiencing and the struggle to make ends meet actually means the diet don't work for you the same.
What the fuck did she just say to me? I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. Look, what I will say is groceries are expensive. But if your mind is made up to eat a specific type of way, then that's the way that you're going to eat. If you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat McDonald's, I'm not going to eat Burger King, I'm not going to eat fried chicken and fries every day, then you won't do it. If you said, I'm going to go to Tropical Smoothie and you know, get a sandwich from there and a smoothie and spend my $10, $11 there rather than spending $10, $11 at McDonald's, because I believe the prices are about the same now with the inflation. So you may as well go spend your money somewhere else. But I say that to say you have a better chance of losing some weight by changing your diet. McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell and Wendy's, what else they got out there? Whataburger, all that shit. None of that is gonna help. None of that is gonna do anything for you. And that has nothing to do with the Trump era. You can easily go into the grocery store in the same way that you buy chips and little bites. You can easily put that stuff down and go buy some fruit and buy some vegetables. But because it doesn't taste the same and it doesn't fill you up the way that you want it to fill you up, you are going to stay away from that and blame it on Donald Trump and and blame it on racism. That's crazy. You're fat because people are racist. What type of shit? That's why I say, what the fuck did you just say to me? Like, come on, man. But with that being said, brothers, that's all that real and rare analysis. These so-called black women are fat out here because the so-called white man is racist toward them. And if you disagree with that, then you hate women. Period.